Hey, Nikki Brown here. No matter where you are, no matter what part of the world you're in, I hope that you're having a good day. Okay, a little bit of history today. So, I went back and read some of Columbus's journal entries. The first time I read them was around 2008, because I became an English major in college. Prior to that, I was very Afrocentric because I learned about Egypt and the pharaohs and all the symbols um, back in like 2003. So now this was newfound information. I also learned about the religions when I was a freshman in college as well. How basically whoever, you know, could talk the loudest and spread the most information converted people to Protestantism or Lutheranism or whatever it was. And then prior to that, if you didn't convert under the certain rule of whoever was in control at that time, you were basically unalived, right? So a lot of people converted from spirituality to Christianity or Judaism or Islam, um, based on uh, what they were told to do by that particular ruler in that particular nation during those times. Because let's fast forward. Let's go to Christopher Columbus's journal entries from 1493, because he left Europe in August, which would have, and it took him 33 days. So that would put us in November. So that by the time he got back to Europe, it was already 1493. So he came, stayed a little while, and then went back to Europe, and then came back off and on, right? So he basically said that the people were kind, they were willing to trade, but they were stupid because they didn't understand the value of things, because they were willing to trade gold for things like shoestrings, right? He also said that basically that everyone walked around naked, including the women, and the women seemed to do most of the work. And that speaks to the fact that men were protectors. Women were typically the ones who were trading, right? They spun the silk. So they traded the silk that they spun. Or, if they were in a mine digging gold, because again, Christopher Columbus saw them mining gold. So that's why he forced them to mine gold for him when he came back on one of his voyages. But they came with guns. So the men were unable to protect the women like they normally would, because they simply had bow and arrows. And, because Christopher Columbus came as a friend the first time, they didn't think of anything of it when he came back. And this is when all the genocide started, right? He also said that most of the men only had one woman unless they had money, right? So people keep saying, oh, it's in a man's nature to blah, 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 de blah, 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 right? But that is not true. I have been saying this for years, and this is not, it's not about being right, but you can read what the people said when they came here, right, to the Americas. And the Americas, from Canada all the way down to the islands, is what I'm referring to as the Americas, right? Our ancestors in the Algonquin language called it Gondwana. We did not call it America. We did not call it the New World. We did not call it Hispaniola. When Christopher Columbus came here, the first thing he did was rename all the islands, right? He first went to the Bahamas, right? Think of the people of the Bahamas. They live near the equator. You think that they look like the Indians that they show us in the pictures now? Right? They also refer to them, the first name he said was Indian, right? So if he renamed the land, he also renamed the people. He called them Tainos or Arawaks, which would mean that there were different tribes of people, right? Or or you would say different types of people, saying that they were swarthy, but not as dark as the people of the Canary Islands, copper colored. These were all the terms. Swarthy means dark skin. So these were the terms that were used to describe the people when they encountered the people on the land. Kind, giving, naked, swarthy, copper colored. Not religious or practicing idolatry, but they can be converted to Christians. They can be turned into slaves because they're basically stupid. These are the things he said, y'all. So now when we hear men say, oh, well, men are supposed to have multiple wives, that is not true. We have been hypersexualized, just like the buck busting, to bring the man down to a certain level and for their own pleasure as well. Women were also used for their own pleasure, and it also mentions little girls. They mainly focused on the women and the little girls. Why? To please the men on the boats. This is what he said. To please the men on the boats. They made the women and the children work, mainly the females. And then the men who tried to buck up against them, they buck busted them or they committed genocide. And so now we have a bunch of hypersexual people who, because they were stimulated, they think they like everything, and so they indulge in everything. But again, this goes back centuries. We do everything that goes against our very nature. And this is why most men have the patriarchal mindset that they have to this day, because they think that's what they're supposed to have because they were programmed and conditioned to think so. But that is not our original way. That is not how our ancestors did things. And I just wanted to share that with you. I hope this was helpful. Love y'all. Later.